Planning a trip to Turkana in the northwestern part of Kenya? Be prepared to endure the ride of your life. A ride of hardship for the most part of the journey, especially between Marich Pass in West Pokot and Lodwar, the headquarters of Turkana County. The journey requires mental strength, without which one is likely to break down, owing to the frustration that comes with driving on rugged roads, coupled with the scorching sun and insecurity.
Wamesema daraja imebomoka. Sasa ikabidi tulale hapa. Ni mvua ilikuwa mingi, lakini tangu zamani ilikuwa imebomoka pande moja. Sasa jana imebebwa yote.
Wesi hapa ni chungu nzima. Hakuna security. For example, saa hii tulifika huko mbele kwa daraja, ikabidi turudi tulale karibu na police station hapa. Huko mbele haipitiki.
I have traveled this road since 2011. This was my 10th trip to Turkana by road. We left Kapenguria town at 6 in the morning. An hour later, we hit some of the poorest sections of the road. At Marich Pass, the road almost disappears and gets replaced by gaping potholes and dust. 3 hours into the trip, we are drained, yet the worst was still to come. We encounter this. Vehicles parked by the roadside near an administration police camp. They have been here since the previous night. Passengers in the buses are restless and the situation is quickly becoming desperate. No driver was willing to move on from here because something terrible had happened a few kilometers from here.
Hapa ni rough road miaka na miaka. Siwaunda hata hii barabara na daraja watuundie huko mbele.
Umetumia hii barabara muda gani?
Nimetumia miaka karibu hii ni ya 6.
Imekuwa hivi haijai kubadilika.
Hatuoni barabara ni kama unapita kwa shamba kwenyewe.
Sasa kufika tu pale tunashindo nini nyeusi pale mbele. Kumbe ni shimo. Na ni bahati gari ingetumbukia.
This driver was transporting fresh vegetables to Lodwar from Kitale.
Hii barabara wangetafuta tu namna vile watatutengeneza, maana tumeumia kwa muda mrefu sana. Hii si ati ni mara ya kwanza ama mara ya pili. Zaidi ya miaka kama 20 hivi tu.
Na mnaenda nayo tu hivi.
Hivyo tu kimungu tu mpaka tunafika.
Na si inaharibu magari sana.
Sinjo sasa unaona sasa gari ya mtu kama hii sasa angalia.
Na hasara.
Hii sasa yote ni waste.
Kama hii ni thamani ya pesa ngapi?
Siwezi jua kwa sababu unajua sasa si mboga ya mtu mmoja. Ni ya watu wengi. Kama miraa kama hiyo yote ni waste.
He is one of the many drivers who have seen this road's condition deteriorate.
Ile masaibu yenye tumepata kwa hii barabara ni ngumu. Hii barabara wa serikali inatuambia mara mingi inaunda na iundiki.
After our small talk, we encourage each other to move on slowly. But it is not long before we encounter firsthand just what the cause of the halt in transportation here in Kainuk. This is Kainuk Bridge, and a section of it has caved in on one end. This gaping hole had caved in inward towards the other side of the bridge, making the structure unusable and the section of the road impassable. Under the bridge was just soil and no hardcore material that could have been used to make the soil compact to withstand the force of last night's heavy downpour. The river was completely swollen, its raging waters rushing downhill, sweeping everything in its way. A few meters from this spot, an even bigger problem. This section of the bridge has completely collapsed, creating a huge gap with a distance of close to 10 meters from one end to the other. At first, the residents were stranded with no way of proceeding. But soon, some youth took advantage of the situation and brought ladders to help the residents to cross over, but at a fee. Soon, tens of people started crossing over from one end of the bridge to the other, and before long, there was a frenzy of activity, and more ladders were brought in. More money exchanges hands. For these people, life has to go on. They have been neglected and marginalized for so long, such that a natural calamity like this only halts their lives briefly.
Hili tatizo ni kubwa. na ni serikali kuu nitakana iingilie kati kwa uwepesi ama kwa haraka ili wakaweze kusuluhisha shida hili. Maana ni jambo tumekuwa tukiripoti tangu mwanzo wakati kulionekana dalili, ili wakaweze kuarrest hii situation before it affects many.
Transporters too have to move their goods quickly. Rebecca Wamboi works for a bus company. Today she is ferrying foodstuff and other goods worth thousands of shillings to Lodwar. She has to have them delivered on time, otherwise her company will incur expenses.
Venye sisi tumetoka ile magari yenye tumetoka Kitale tumefika hapa kwa mpaka hapa penye bridge imekatikia. Kuna zile zenye tena zilikuwa zikitoka Turkana County zikikuja zielekee upande wa Kitale. So tukifika hapa katikati tunabadilisha mizigo na abiria wanapita wanaenda na zile wanarudi upande wa Turkana County.
Rebecca spends 7,000 shillings to have the goods moved, an extra expense she has to bear. These young men decide to use rudimentary methods to move Rebecca's goods to the other side of the bridge. It is a tedious exercise, but one that has to be executed very fast. An elderly man is among those who want to use the bridge. He is being aided to walk across. One of his sons attempts to stop us from filming, but soon agrees. The old man is ailing, but we are not told what from. He drags his feet as he is held by the shoulders. He has to get to the other side in order to access a medical facility in Kainuk. Slowly and carefully, the two young men assist the old man to descend using one of the ladders. It is a painstaking affair.
Tunaomba serikali itutambue sisi pia hapa, iturekebishie hii barabara, kwani hata ukikumbuka hapa sasa Turkana tuko na mafuta, na hii mafuta si ya Turkana, ni ya nchi yote. Zile pesa zinapatikana kwa hii mafuta itasaidia Mkenya yote. Kwa hivyo tunaomba hii barabara irekebishwe.
Years back, this road was fully tarmacked. A Norwegian firm had constructed the highway from Kitale all the way to Lodwar. The road was to ease transportation of fish from Lake Turkana to Kitale and eventually to other markets. This is what is left of the tarmac now, an agonizing ride with the only consolation being the beautiful scenery. It only takes close to 6 hours driving from Kainuk to Lodwar. Some sections of the road are completely impassable and drivers have to search for a road quite literally. This is Lokichar, a sleepy town right in the middle of Kainuk and Lodwar, and the town is bearing the brunt of the bad road.
Viongozi wamekwemo, walikuwa wakatoka, marais wengi wameingia, lakini tangu ili barabara la kuelekea inapita sehemu ya Pokot na kuelekea Turkana limekuwa likipuuzwa. Fisababu yaweza julikana na walio kule, maana wananchi wamekuwa wakilia tangu. Wale viongozi wengine wa hapa mashinani wamekuwa wakilalamikia mambo hayo tangu, lakini walio juu hawajawahi shughulikia na kuitatua hili shida.
And it gets worse when you go further from this little shopping center. This road has been cut off by the recent rains. What's left of it is open space, a section that is completely impassable. The gap is both huge and deep, and there is no sign to warn drivers about it. By the look of it, it appears this section has been repaired severally, but the job has been poorly done. A small river passes right across this road. Turkana County has got to be one of the few counties in this country with the worst road network, and a lot of it has to do with simply poor engineering. I'm not an engineer, I am not an expert, but I want to show you an example of what ails the road network here in the Turkana County. This was supposed to be a bridge, but what the contractor did here was basically fill up this entire area with loose soil and a bit of hardcore material and then put the tarmac on top. This was a rehabilitation that was done a couple of years ago. But as you can see now, there's really nothing left of it. The road is completely cut off and no vehicle can pass by here. You can see on my right now, we're showing you pictures of what seems to be loose sand that was used by the contractor to fill up the area. And on my left, if my cameraman can pan, you'll see what they did was they had loose sand, compacted it, and then filled it up in the middle with hardcore material, basically stones, and then on top of it, covered it with soil. What the engineer or the contractor must have forgotten was that when there's full force of water coming here from a heavy downpour, it would simply start sweeping off the water and the sand from underneath. And then eventually you have what you see here today, a collapse. This is what's interesting in this area. Flash floods happen here every now and then. What is being experienced right now in Turkana is flash floods, and this is the reason why we have poor road networks in Turkana. If you can follow me this way, I'll just show you the direction where the water comes from, and usually it comes downstream from the hills, and it's usually very, very forceful. What you can see here, concrete that was just demolished recently by the flash floods. Another interesting part about this construction, this piece of engineering, which is very astonishing, is what we will show you just now. A tunnel that was built by the engineer to help ease the amount of water that was coming downstream. But this is basically what they built. A tunnel that is basically less than half a meter in terms of width. And this was what is expected to drive the water from that end up until here. This is difficult. It can't even hold the force of the water that comes from this area once it's rained. So this is exactly what ails Turkana County, just having contractors or engineers who want to do a shoddy job, get paid quickly, and then end up with this, roads that are impassable.
And there are sections that are worse. As we proceeded, we came across this damaged section. In most parts of Turkana, road contractors have been building elevated drifts that allow water along shallow rivers to pass across the road during the rainy season. This was damaged a few months ago following the rains, but that is not to say that a heavy downpour is to blame entirely. Far from it.
Most of those, and almost all of them, actually were constructed in the early 80s. They have been there over 40 years as we speak. The drift, like I mentioned, you are allowing water to pass over. And as it passes over, then you expect that it can be able to undermine the downstream side, because the water is actually underscoring the downstream side. So what is required often is to make sure at least you are there to do protection works so that it can remain. The areas possibly we have seen those drifts almost giving in are areas that we have already given contractors to work on. So they to actually do bridges.
These poor roads have also been the cause of insecurity in this region. Trucks with full loads of food and other goods have been ambushed by bandits on several occasions. Mid this year, 2 lorries carrying relief food were attacked and the bandits damaged sacks of food. Luckily, the drivers and their turnboys survived, but in many other cases, the drivers have had to pay a very heavy price. These are common sightings along this road, and it's worse if it happens at night.
Sio kawaida kwa nati kutoka kwa gari, lakini kwa sababu ya barabara ni mbovu kabisa. Barabara ya hapa ni mbovu kabisa, hasa sana kutokea Lokcha kwenda mpaka Rodwa.
They say this has been the norm in this part of the country, and the situation is not improving. This is Lochuere area. Just 2 hours ago, residents here say the area was dry. In fact, so many motorists were using the road, but now it is impassable.
For close to 45 minutes now, we've been stranded here in Nakwe. The road's simply impassable because of what you see behind me. We understand that there's been a heavy downpour east of Turkana South, and this is the result. Now the situation has been compounded even further by the poor road network here. Simply put, there's been poor engineering of most of the roads and the bridges.
Hapa ni ile kuachiliwa, kunegletiwa. Manake ingekuwa wajamaa wetu hao wanasiasa wametilia maana ni kwa kutengezea njia. Hapa wangetundia kama ni ile flyover ile, ingekuwa afadhali. Sasa najua za watu wetu wa serikali hao wangekuwa watu wengine, wanajua tu hapa obvious kinyesha tu lazima nini laga itajaa. Wangekuwa watu wengine wangekuwa wametengenezea barabara hapa. At least waige tu kama ni bridge kidogo, at least tasaidika.
If it rains another 2 or 3 days, this drift will collapse completely, raising questions on the kind of construction done here. Road construction and maintenance is plagued by poor workmanship, especially if the job is given to a local contractor.
This road is an example, as it appears those given contracts for its maintenance have no knowledge of what they ought to do.
The biggest problem, and if somebody was to actually go through that network, is that there are so many crossings that require bridges. And as of now, most of them do not have bridges. What we have are drifts. And the drifts are made such that when it rains, the vehicles will have to wait until the water subsides. But when it's not raining, or when the water is low, the water levels are low, people can be able to pass. That is basically what has been serving the entire network in that area, because there are several bridges that would require a lot of resources.
But it is not all gloom. This highway from Kakuma to Lokichogio connects Kenya to South Sudan. An ambitious project to reconstruct the highway from Lodwar to South Sudan was launched recently. The section being targeted in the first phase of the construction is not considered the worst, and residents are not happy.
Serikali huwa tunasikia wanatangaza, wanasema wametengeneza barabara, na hili barabara haijatambuliwa kama sehemu zingine mali wamesema wametengeneza barabara. Hii hata tumeshindwa.
Ile monitoring ya kuconfirm are they doing the right thing or they are not doing the right thing, I don't see it happening from the concern. Ile utofauti hapa ni kwamba it's a national government project. Then the national government project need to observe and see, is this project benefiting the community? Is it bring a good report to them as a national, or it is not?
Entirely, we are talking of almost 70 billion to do the entire road from Eldoret all the way to Nadapal. And the reason why it is a little bit higher, as you saw, is that it has so many bridges. And therefore, the bridge cost also increases the cost of the construction. Yeah, because it's going to be slightly higher than 100 million per kilometer.
The road between Kitale and Kenya to Juba in South Sudan, referred to as the Kenya-Sudan Link Road, is part of the International Trunk Road A1. It is one of the major corridors identified for support under the Northern Corridor project. This is part of the link road from South Sudan to the port of Mombasa. It forms part of Corridor 3 of the high-priority transnational road corridors under the East African Community Road Network. When completed, the road is expected to contribute to economic growth in the region through increased trade and better access for landlocked countries to the port of Mombasa.
As we have seven contracts, but I mentioned around Kainuk and a place called Kainuk Kalimulok. That area is a problem, and that's the reason why you find those contractors dragging behind, because they only work for less than five hours in a day because of the insecurity.
Back at the Kainuk Bridge, some repairs have been done and vehicles are now passing through, but a section of the bridge is already cracking, a clear indication that it cannot withstand the weight of the heavy vehicles that pass here. And it seems the hardships for those using this road will continue for much longer.
It is not really cracking. What happened is that one of the piers went down, gave in. And when it gave in, then the slab is leaning on one side, creating what people feel is a crack, but it's purely not a crack, as it were. As far as the safety of motorists are concerned, we are clear that 4 tons and below, we have no issue. They can be able to use it. But as I've indicated, within 15 months, we shall be able to have a new bridge across the Kainuk. So I think the promise and what we should be able to tell Kenyans and people from Turkana and West Pokot is that we have a contract to do a new bridge, and the contractor is already on the ground. And then what we are actually doing for them now is to ensure that at least we restore the flow of traffic through that bridge and also through the drift. And of course, even if the bridge was to collapse today, the drift will still be available for all the vehicles to pass over. So I think we don't anticipate a problem.
Nimrod, Taabu, NTV, in the county of Turkana.
Baba, Kori gira ya na ni libara go yo na ri mu na mya.